Hey friends. So in this video, what we're going to do is talk about Peter Strawson's reactive attitudes theory. So first, what exactly is a reactive attitude? Well, it's an attitude, right, like joy, resentment, etc., that we adopt in response to what other people do. So one useful way for getting into this is to start uh, with what Strawson starts with, right? To begin at his starting point. Now, conceptually, we can think of it this way. Traditionally, in the history of philosophy, the history of Western philosophy, when philosophers think about responsibility and free will and determinism, they begin by sorting out free will and determinism, trying to settle that debate, and then figuring out how that affects our ideas about responsibility. Strawson goes in the opposite direction. He says, let's take a look at our practices of holding people responsible and then figure out what that tells us about free will and determinism. So Hume wants us to figure out free will and determinism and then figure out responsibility. And Strawson, on the other hand, goes in the opposite direction. He says, let's figure out responsibility and then we can figure out free will and determinism. So where does he begin? Well, he begins with what he describes as a debate between the optimists and the pessimists. So the optimists are the people who say determinism is true, but we can still hold on to our everyday ideas about responsibility, right? Even if they just kind of serve some sort of surface, right? Even if they don't connect up with how the world actually is, nonetheless, we can hold on to these ideas. And some optimists, like Hume, even go so far as to say that our ideas about responsibility require determinism. That is to say, that we couldn't have an idea about responsibility without an idea of determinism. The pessimist, on the other hand, says that we are determined, and what that means is that all of our practices of holding people responsible go out the window. We can't hold people responsible in the same way anymore. We might punish people, but that's just kind of like a practical thing we do. There's not really any kind of deep metaphysical justification for why we would punish a person. So what Strawson wants to do is he wants to step in, or what he does is he steps in and says, hey, look, let's not start the debate here. Let's not start the debate with free will and determinism and then move into responsibility. Instead, let's think about responsibility and human interactions and then work our way into free will and determinism. To that end, he begins with two commonplaces. The first one is that we care deeply about people's intentions, right? That we are really concerned with others' intentions towards us. So if somebody harms me accidentally, I'm annoyed, but I'm not pissed. If somebody maliciously harms me, well, then I'm going to be really mad, right? And the difference is a difference of intention. So Strawson points out, in our everyday, ordinary interactions, intentions matter. That's the first one. Here's the second one. The second one is that we don't regard all people equally. We care about some people's intentions and some people's beliefs about us much more than others. So, for example, I'm not terribly concerned with what the folks on the bus think of me, or at least think of my clothes or think of my haircut. However, I am much more concerned with how my wife thinks about my clothes or thinks about my haircut, or any of these other things. So we care differently about different people's opinions. So with these two commonplaces, Strawson's going to develop an idea of how of different perspectives we can take on interaction in order to arrive at some conclusions about freedom and determinism.